I'm back! So since the RC in Melbourne 3 weeks ago now, I've been hard at work on some new brews with the Final Fantasy expansion set to release on June 13th. A few of the friends and a few members of Bus Stop are going to be going to the PT, so I thought I'd share a few of the ideas I've been working on that might either be able to compete at the PT or just some things to try out at F&M that might be a little bit fun upon the set's release. So there are a handful of cards spoiled so far that I think truly have a chance to make a pretty big impact on Standard, and I'm going to be attempting to highlight as many of them here as I can today. And then I'll be aiming to throw some hands with Sam Loy and his brews in some upcoming videos to showcase our brews and what works, what doesn't, and get a good feel for the format moving forward. Today, I'm going to show 3 of them off, starting with the least out there list I could possibly imagine, and the most boring from probably everyone's perspective, but it's Is It Prowess? So I know it's still performing quite well, it definitely has legs moving into a newer format, and given the format's shifting around the deck and the move towards a slower, more controlling prowess list with the controlling elements out of the sideboard, I started right here. So this is what I'm calling Slow Prowess, and right away off the bat there are 2 brand new cards in the list from the Final Fantasy expansion, which is Vivi and Astrologian's Planisphere. So Izzet shouldn't need an introduction. Everyone should kind of know what this deck is. It is the well-known boogeyman in the format, so I'm just going to go over the potential new toys that I put into the list. So the first really big standout is Astrologian's Planisphere. Planisphere has Job Select, so when it comes into play it creates a 1/1 token hero, and it grants Pseudo Prowess. Kind of a little bit better than Prowess though with this ability. So the power and toughness stays around forever. It gets a +1/+1 counter instead of a +1/+1 trigger. The fact that this is essentially a 2-mana Prowess creature with upside that also triggers Prowess for other creatures, it can be freely bounced with, this town ain't big enough, or moved around to a different token, say to an Otter, to give it essentially double Prowess, is something that I feel is pretty interesting and it's worth exploring. It's also, as I said, recurable with This Town Ain't Big Enough, which is my favorite card in the format, and we have got some This Towns in this list as well. It can be found off Thundertrap Trainer. There's a lot of benefits to having your creature not actually be a creature spell on the stack. With the slower version we've seen from these Izzet lists, I think Vivi could be an option for a top end, which is a crazy thing to say about a 3-drop, but hear me out. Vivi is another not Prowess but is Prowess threat in the deck that also provides a mana advantage. That increases as the game goes along. Mana utilization is something that the Prowess lists have struggled with both stock up and leveling up your talents being luxury plays, where you usually have to sacrifice some form of development onto the board. Vivi allows you to develop spells and threats while also potentially activating Storm Chaser's talents a lot earlier than expected. It allows you to offspring Thundertrap Trainers, which Thundertrap Trainer shines in this list with only, 6 non-spell hits out of the main deck. And it also lets you cast the stock-ups and the cards you find off the stock-up with that mana generation that she provides. All in all, I think with a slower approach we have seen from Izzet Prowess, especially out of the Canadian RC in the hands of Ray Zhang, and utilizing threats like Planisphere, Vivi herself, and even Thundertrap Trainer, which, yes, it is a threat, okay, I love that card, it's going to be a threat. It has strong staying ability and can play through the intense amount of hate cards that we're seeing in the format as it tries to adapt to these Steel Cutter lists. So we have the standard Steel Cutter cards along the way, we have stock ups, we have the Ops, the Monstrous Rage, the Floodmaws, the Cutter itself, and then when we look at the sideboard here, it is those more controlling elements we've seen pop up their heads, with the stock ups in the board, Ral Crackling Wit, these Spell Pierce, Abrades, and Drake Hatches. So this is something I'm pretty excited to look at, and probably out of the 3, it's consistently the most powerful, and really does let you take big advantage of Vivi and Astrologian's Planisphere. So the second list I wanted to highlight is something I'm very excited about. My second list today is Boros Equipments, utilizing a lot of cards from the Final Fantasy expansion, and it's an archetype that I truly feel is being pushed by someone within Wizards of the Coast. The deck is all centered around the density of Equipment Matters effects and leans heavily on Cloud, Midgar Mercenary, right here, to play an aggro/mid-range game that is highly synergistic while trying to maintain an overall higher level of card quality than we've seen from these kind of strategies before. So first off, Cloud himself. Cloud can tutor any equipment from our deck and put it into our hand, doing his best Stoneforge Mystic impersonation, and while he can't put the equipment into play, he can do some unique things with his second ability. As long as Cloud is equipped, if an ability of Cloud or an equipment attached to Cloud would trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So after doing a deep dive of the playable equipment in Standard, I ended up with the mix you see here. So this is 1 Coral Sword, 1 Chainsaw, 4 Quarry Steel Cutter, 1 Ether Spark, and 1 Buster Sword. So Coral Sword is a very cheap equipment. It can be flashed in as a nice little combat trick to give First Strike. And when you give it to Cloud, he can get First Strike twice, usually irrelevant. Chainsaw is a tutorable removal spell that if it's equipped to Cloud will get 2 counters when a creature dies, so it'll be able to permanently grow how big the Chainsaw can go to every other creature you can equip it to in the future. And then Quarry Steel Cutter, once again, it is one of the most powerful cards in the Standard format, but it has some really nice synergies with the whole deck list overall. So if it's equipped to Cloud and you can play 2 spells in a turn, you can make multiple monks. When you have Firion in play, which is another one of the new Final Fantasy legendary creatures, you can make a copy of Quarry Steel Cutter for 1 turn when you cast it. But importantly, this allows, again, another possibility for making multiple monks. And with Sunpearl Kirin, we can pick up any non-land in the deck, so it acts as like a flying creature that's great for our equipment, but it always can trigger Quarry Steel Cutter, which I'm going to go into more detail later. We also have the more mid-range options of Buster Sword and the Ether Spark. Buster Sword allows us to play a longer game if we can connect with it by drawing an extra card, and 2 cards if we have it equipped to a Cloud. And the Ether Spark acts as a value engine that, if it's attached to Cloud, we can copy its loyalty abilities, so we could draw potentially 4 cards with it the turn after we put it into play. The creature suite here is to complement the large amount of equipment we are going to be playing in the deck, while also trying to stay low to the ground. So I'm going to go over those as I go. So Freya Crescent is a new 1/1 mana dork, only for equipment and equipping abilities. While it is equipped, it is a flying attacker in your turn. It also lets you play the Ether Spark on turn 3 if you manage to go turn 1 Freya, turn 2 Cloud, turn 3 Ether Spark plus equip. Then we have Heartfire Hero. It needs no introduction, but it does trigger when it's targeted with an equip ability, and you can even equip to the Heartfire Hero if it is already equipped with the equipment, just to make it grow again. And with all the equipment in the list mostly pumping power, it makes the mouse much more painful if it does die. Now, we also have Zac Fair. Zac is a new creature from the Final Fantasy expansion again. It is a 1/2, technically, that is more than happy to die, sharing his power as a mini buff, giving the token to something else, which with Heartfire Hero will also give an additional trigger. It also swaps equipment around in mid-combat, which can be a nice little combat trick, and it can prevent creatures from biting the dust to removal spells as well by giving it indestructibility. And then we have Raban here. So Raban is a 2 mana 2/2 creature that has ward pay life equal to Raban's power. And whenever he attacks, we also get to equip 1 equipment we control to another target attacking creature. So Raban has scaling ward, which I think is a really powerful thing in this list. We are trying to be very aggressive. We are trying to reduce your opponent's life total very quickly. So the fact that Raban is an incredibly powerful threat, but it also will tax your opponent's life total if they try to interact with Raban is pretty impressive. We can also respond to Raban's ward trigger with something like activating Zac Fair or flashing in Coral Sword. And then Sunpearl Kirin, as mentioned earlier, this is just an easy way to guarantee Quarry Steel Cutter triggers, but it can also allow us to do weird things in the list like replay Chainsaw for more removal value. We can replay Cloud for repeatable tutors, and in weird moments as well, it can also pick up the tokens that are created by either Firion or Blacksmith talent to draw a card as well. So this is a deck I am super excited to keep working on. I'm sure I'm not alone in that. There are a lot of Cloud Strife fans in the world, and I hope I can do our boy justice with the shell moving forward. And I think this is one that Sam also has like a varied idea of how he wants to build it, so I'm going to be keen to see how he plays. So with the sideboard here, I've lent pretty hard on just generic interaction that I think the deck might need into certain other things. I really like Magebane Lizard. I think Joshua might be a nice little top-end threat that can return multiple creatures with his Chapter 3 Saga ability, and then just the standard Ghost Vacuums, Destroy Evil for disenchant effects, and a few little extra pieces of removal. One thing I didn't even mention in the list, and is going to be in a lot of decks I think moving forward, is Starting Town. It really does allow the mana to be a little bit better for these 2 or 3 color really aggressive decks, coming down early, providing 1 mana of any color, and the life loss not being as big of a deficit in something like this as you would expect. Now, the final list I'm going to show off today, it's a little bit wacky. It's way deeper into the world of deck building than the other ones have been. So that one is this Esper Surveil list that we have come up with. So When I first saw Esper Origins spoiled, this one here, I knew this card had some potential. Potential for something very, very special, and after countless disappointing drafts, being pulled in many, many directions, I felt like I struck gold. See, Esper Origins is more than one card, it's kind of like 2 to 3 cards in one. The front side isn't that exciting, I'll admit, but 2 life and some card manipulation here isn't the worst. The backside is what shines here. So if you can cast Esper Origins from your graveyard, it'll return as Esper Marduin. Now, Esper Marduin has the ability that when it immediately transforms, you will be able to get a permanent from the top of your deck. So if you have set up your Surveil well, this is basically a free draw card. It then is a 4/4, which is a pretty big sized creature in this format. And on the following turn, it's going to add green, which will let you hopefully develop a little bit more, or just power out a little bit more creatures. We can also use the mana for things like Brood Spinner here. And then on the final turn, once you've gotten to chapter 3, Esper Marduin will go away, but it does give all other creatures +2/+2 and trample. Another teammate of mine was very excited about Matoya, the Archon Elder, and we did a deep dive on what actually surveils in this format, and this is where the whole deck kind of started to come together. See, we were trying to build this as a control pile, and the answer was in front of us the whole time, which was Snarling Gorehound, funnily enough. So Snarling Gorehound allows us to surveil off any creature with power 2 or less entering, which is every creature in the deck, excluding Overlord of the Baelmerk and Taval, which is the top end of our deck. So the shell ended up developing into this. So we're utilizing all the Surveil synergies here. The plan is basically this. We want to fill our yard for multiple reasons, and along the way of doing this, accrue some advantages and try to have a steady stream of threats with this lingering feeling of inevitability. The late game should involve either Esper Origins giving overrun to a host of these smaller creatures in the form of Snarling Gorehound, Fairy Dream Thief, and Broodspinner/Broodspinner tokens, which we can even use Esper Marduin's double green mana to activate fairly early. Or we want to be using Taval that we can rebuy with either Overlord of the Baelmerk or with Awaken the Honored Dead, Chapter 3. So Taval allows us to have this big mana generative ability. A lot of our cards have weird mana costs that we can kind of cheat with Taval, like Tear Asunder. We can pay for 2 life with the kicker and only pay green and black mana. Rakshas's Bargain is going to hurt to cast, but I think it is worth it to be able to cast it for technically free the turn you cast Taval. And then we have weird things like Shinra Reinforcements. Now, this may cost 3 life and just a single black mana with Taval in play, but it also fuels the dragon, it gains life back straight away, and it has less than 3 power, which surveils off Snarling Gorehound and keeps the whole engine running. So, as I said earlier, the deck features Awaken the Honored Dead, and it also uses Tear Asunder as removal that hits any threat. So I'm looking at you, Steel Cutter, when I say this. And Tear Asunder, as I said, can even be kicked cheaply with Taval. So overall, the deck is doing a lot of things, and it's trying to maximize this perfect balance of cards that help you fill the graveyard, cards that want to be in the graveyard, and cards that give you a payoff for doing one or both of those previous 2. There is a chance this deck is going to be way too slow or way too clunky, that Graveyard Hate could play a serious concern to the deck. We're seeing a lot of Ghost Vacuum as the primary piece of Graveyard Hate at the moment, so there's a chance that this deck can sneak under the radar and be a real contender, and I do think there are enough payoff cards and enough enablers in the shell to have that nice balance that I was talking about. So those are the 3 lists that I've been the most excited to work on as the spoiler season has been unraveling, but there's still plenty of things to brew out there. There's a lot of other things that I haven't shown off today that I might show off in the future, and so many exciting new cards to try out. So hopefully this has inspired some people to have a deeper dive outside of those established archetypes and explore some unconventional options around there. And if you want to see any of these decks highlighted above, I'll be doing a little bit of a battle with Sam Loy in the future, the second we can get access to these cards on Arena or Magic Online. So once again, thank you for watching. If you watched this far, and if you want to pick up any of the cards I've highlighted today, Pat's MTG Auctions and the MTG Bazaar will have the whole claim lots that going live for Final Fantasy Magic. These will be live from the 5th of June, sometime at night, and he has opened so much of this set. So there is going to be plenty available. I don't think anyone is going to go wanting. I'll put all 3 of the deck lists links to my Mox field below, and you can see any updates I make in real time as I go along. So hopefully this has been a fun little brewing journey, and stay tuned for some battles with Sam when they go live. So until next time, thank you very much.